Hello, class. Sorry, this is getting to you a little bit late. I think I said in week 11. Was it week 11? This would be up on last Thursday. Didn't quite make that deadline. Yeah, things just really kind of came crashing down for me this week, and I just got way behind. Including your essays number 2, which I still have to get to, and they're my absolute top priority at this point. So we'll be done tomorrow. Tomorrow they will be done. Okay, that is Friday, the 13th. But I felt an absolute need to get you going on the research paper, and even if you don't start it right now, I want it to be available for you, and I want you to start understanding what you need to be doing, and to give you the option of budgeting your time however you need to do that. So that's the number one priority for this video, is going through the research paper. I'm going to put that up. By the time this video up, the research paper should be posted as well. So what I recommend is that you open up your computer, watch the video with a computer screen open, and either print out or have up the research essay assignment and go through it as I go through it. And I'm going to point to a few things, or explain how to get to a few things on the internet. And unfortunately, I don't have the technical prowess right now to be able to show that on the video, so it's on the screen. I know there's a way to do that, probably pretty easily, but it's not quite part of my repertoire yet. So, and since I'm doing the videos on my phone, I'm not sure what would be entailed in terms of editing those two together. Anyway, so have your computer open and have a copy of the research essay assignment open while we go through this. And I will put up, from now on, every week for the next 4 weeks, I will put up a Q&A forum, an optional Q&A forum. So if you have questions that come up, little, big, however consequential, however minor or major they might be, then you can put those up there. I'll try to get in there every day and answer any questions that you might have regarding the final assignment and the related assignment, which is the annotated bibliography, the annotated works cited page. Okay, so you should already be working, or 2 weeks, but 2 weeks as of Tuesday, I think. I put up for you to work on essay number 3, so that should be underway, or you should be at least thinking about that. That's due on the 23rd. And first off, the research, the first 3 essays have a minimum of 500 words, and most of you are getting 700 to 800 words pretty easily. The research essay has a minimum of 2,000 words, so it's about 2,500 words. So it's about 3 times the length of the papers you've been doing so far. But what I want to assure you of is that what you're actually doing, the process is no different. It's just you're getting into your argument more in depth. You're able to make your case that much better and stronger and bring in more evidence. And the big difference, the only difference really, other than length, is the fact that you'll be bringing in secondary sources that you yourself locate and bring in to bear on your argument. Okay, so it is. I won't try to gloss over that. That is a major difference, but the writing itself is no different. It's just the exact same thing you've been doing, establishing an argument. Defining your argument, stating it clearly, and then following through with supporting evidence. And in some cases, you might find it's actually easier, because it's very easy to build an argument around secondary sources. That is, what other people have written about a given text. So go ahead and get out the research for essay for the research essay assignment, and we'll go through that. It's a lot of and just to sort of emphasize how similar this is to the other essays. A lot of the language is exactly the same in terms of it's a literary analysis and an argument, which I have in every single essay. That's what this is. Not a book report, not a summary, not a collection of descriptive passages, but a literary analysis and an argument, first and foremost. Okay, and the preamble there is the same. Okay, the starting point is to pick one or more of the texts we have read and one of the topics we have addressed in the first three papers. So journey, essentially, as it applies to one of the texts we've read. You may actually use one of your first three essays as a draft going into the essay number 4. If you want, you can just revise and expand what you've already written in one of your papers and turn that into a researched essay. That's fine. That's totally fine if you use the exact same words. In most cases, you'll be doing quite a bit of revising, but nonetheless, that is completely fine if your paper is embedded within the final paper you turn in for the research project. Okay. You can also, the third paper obviously is on Jason the Argonauts or Sir Gawain the Green Knight, but we're of course covering The Tempest, and then we have 3 more books. We're doing Alice in Wonder, Candide next by Voltaire, which is the 18th century French text. We're doing Alice in Wonderland, and then Siddhartha, a 20th century novel, a short novel. The rest of the books are short and fun. I think if you made it this far, it only gets easier. And I mean, some of you just like this stuff just fine and thought it was a breeze already, but it does get even more familiar, more of the kind of standard novel format that you're used to, and you don't have to even with Shakespeare, you don't have to like translate what you're reading. It's just straightforward English. I mean, Voltaire's Candide is translated, of course, but it's translated into modern English, not in the way that Gawain is translated to modern English, where it's still kind of a strange format of a poem. It's straightforward prose. The last 3 books. Okay, so you can write on those, but of course, if you're going to write on those for your research paper or The Tempest, then I would advise you to really get going on that right away and read ahead of the class, obviously, if you're doing one of the last 3 books, and I can talk to you about this stuff anytime, but you're going to have to be formulating a lot of your ideas on your own independently because you can't really do a research paper on Siddhartha in the last week of class. Okay, I mean, you could, I suppose, but I wouldn't really advise that. I think this is something you should get going on right away. At the very least, start forming your ideas and kind of poking around, seeing if you can gather a few sources together, and so at least you're prepared and ready to go into a writing session toward the end of the semester where you have a really firm idea what you're going to be doing. Okay, so and also for that reason, I'd suggest getting essay number 3 out of the way as soon as you possibly can, and setting your sights on the research project, which is, you have a full month on. Almost, it's going to be doing 5/11, but still, it's not the kind of thing you want to wait for the last minute. Okay, so there are basically 4 options. I've mapped them out, and these are more or less the same kinds of topics that I've given you on the first 3 papers, and I kind of condensed those and summarized them into 4 options. So option 1 is a historical analysis or development over time. How have things changed? What in the literature you're reading has held up, what has not held up, how have our ideas changed, how have our values changed, and essentially comparing the text and the culture in which that text exists to ours, and I have a set of questions that correspond to that. You don't, for all these topics, you don't feel like you have to answer all the questions. The questions are just to get you going, to get you thinking, to get you brainstorming about the topic you choose. The second is just and some of these blend over into each other, and so you can even think of turning kind of a combination of different topics together. It's up to you to shape the topics I provide you. As long as you're more or less staying to these guidelines, that's fine. That's all I'm asking for. So the second is the current relevance, and specifically what I ask for here is what is the importance of the work for us today, and why. This doesn't necessarily have to involve the idea of the journey, but it certainly can. What can we learn from the books we've been reading, basically? Should we read them? And if you say we shouldn't be reading this stuff, that's fine too. You just got to make your case. The third question is I had to split this in two. It started to get too big, but along the lines of current relevance, is there some sort of comparison or correlation you can make with pop culture? You could either, you could watch, or I should say just current culture, not necessarily pop culture, but pop culture is fine. So you could watch for instance, a film adaptation of Tempest. There's several out there. You might have to look around for them, kind of hard, but they are there, and you could do a comparison. I mean, whenever you're doing a comparison, you have to have a reason for the comparison. That's the main thing to keep in mind. What are you concluding from this comparison? That is, you read one work, you watch this, and you point out what the differences are, or how something is interpreted in the work, and what does that tell you? What can you draw from that, from watching that work and reading that work side by side? It doesn't necessarily have to be an adaptation, though. You could talk about Gollum and the Green Knight and Game of Thrones, right? I mean, it's Game of Thrones is a fantasy medieval setting. Gollum is a kind of a fantasy mythology written with a medieval setting, and you could if you're a Game of Thrones fan, you could take a look at those two texts and see if you can draw some sort of conclusion from looking at them. That is, the thing you want to ask is, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? Why should we care about the fact that you're looking at comparisons between Gollum and the Green Knight and Game of Thrones? What can that teach us? What can we learn from that? What is a significant thing you can say about looking at those two side by side? Okay. The fourth option is isolating one aspect of the journey in one or more of the works. Again, sort of the same kind of thing I've been asking you to do. How is the journey depicted? Why is it depicted that way? What does it say about the journey? What does reading this work have to show us about what the journey is? And obviously, that the term journey itself is something that is open to interpretation. So you'd want to make sure you define your approach very, very clearly, very particularly, and to say something very specific that you can then something you can argue, that you can then work throughout your paper to support and defend that argument. Okay. And again, what I say here, as in all the papers, shape down your analysis to one very specific approach and assertion. Give the reason for your approach as a part of your thesis. What is the reason you're writing this? Okay. That kind of so what idea, right? I mean, it's kind of rude, but so what? What do you have to say about this? So what? Why? Make your case for why what you're saying is something that is important to say. Okay. So the research requirement is for 5 citations from 5 secondary sources, right? Whatever text you're writing about, text or texts, those are your primary sources, and those need to be in your works cited page 2. I'm pretty sure I asked you, yes. So in essay number 3, you are creating a works cited page for your primary work. That is either Jason the Argonauts or Sir Gawain the Green Knight, or both of them. If you talk about both of them, whichever one, or if both, you talk about those in your third essay, you should be creating a works cited entry for that book. And I think I asked you to do that. I think I provided. No, I don't think I did. I will put up a sample of how to do that. Okay, how to create that works cited entry. What I'm asking you, and you'll have to do that for your secondary sources as well. Okay, the first assignment before the research paper is due, the week before, the assignment that is due is a annotated works cited page. So you will be gathering your sources, creating entries for your works cited page, your 5 entries. These don't necessarily have to be the ones you use, but I mean, using your time wisely, that would be best, is to find and to read the sources that you're going to incorporate into your research paper, and the 5 or more. I mean, it's 5 minimum. You can use more than that if you want, but create entries for those works for those secondary sources, and then that is what will appear on your works cited page with your research paper that you turn in the final day of class. For the annotated works cited page, which is due a week before the research paper, I'm asking you to take those entries and also create a paragraph that is an annotation, essentially a summary of what the work is, and how you're going to use it in your paper. What is the interest to you? How do you agree with this? Do you disagree? How are you going to use it in the paper? Okay, and I'll put a sample of that up as well. So a sample of the annotated works cited that you'll have 5 of for your annotated works cited page. Okay, that you turn in ahead of time. And then for your research paper, you just take the annotations out, copy and paste, whatever, and make a regular works cited page and turn that in with your research paper. Okay, I hope I'm being clear on this, but this has taken a long time to go through in my in-person classes. So if watch the video a couple times, I guess, and if you have questions, definitely get in touch with me very soon. Okay, so I'm putting up a example of an annotation for our book, for one of our books, an example of a annotated works cited entry. And what I'll do is use the essay in the back of The Tempest. I'll create an entry for it and an annotation for the essay, and that's something you can use. You can use that, of course, in your essay if you're writing on The Tempest, if you want. I am asking you to get 3 of them, though, at least through the library databases. So I'll put up on how to do that, how to get into the library databases. Probably something you already know, but if you just go to the NPC website, and this is one of those things where I'd love to be able to show you on the computer, but I'm just going to describe what I'm doing. So if you there's a number of ways to get into it, but go to quick links on the NPC website, and if you go to library, and then go down to the bottom of the page and you go to search, and then you hit articles and databases, that will bring you into all the databases that we have available through the NPC library. And if you go down to humanities, there's a couple of good ones there. There's Salem Literature, which will have stuff about all of our works we've read. JSTOR is a very good one. you might want to start with Academic Search Complete, which is under General and Multiple Topics. Just click on that, and then if you're on campus, you won't need a password. But if you're doing this from home, you will need a password and username. I'll talk about that in a second. So once the search page comes up, you definitely want to hit full text, and I would advise that you start with scholarly journals first and see if you can find some good scholarly sources to use as evidence in your paper, support it in your paper. And then you start narrow. Start with whatever text you're reading, and then whatever approach you're reading. So Tempest and put me in the spot here. Say you want to look at the psychology of the journey. How the journey is something that we go through in our mind. So you might look at Tempest and psychology, or Tempest. Maybe try Tempest and Journey, Tempest and Quest. Play around with search terms, and also you might want to do a general search and just sort of see what's out there first, and sort of decide on your topic, decide on your specific approach as you do your research. So you could look through a bunch of sources and then decide as you go what your very specific approach wants to be. Okay, but always you want you do want to develop your own voice, your own idea within the context of the other works. You don't just want to disagree with them. You want to state and assert your own idea, your own voice, your own argument, even if it's similar to one of the sources you find. You still want to carve out that place for yourself to say your own idea. Okay. Okay. So if you're doing this at home, again, I'll put this up there, but you go to my NPC. You find this in another class here. Okay, and do this as soon as you can, and make sure you figure this out as soon as possible. To get logged onto the databases from a remote site when you're not on campus, you go to the NPC library databases, and at some point you'll be prompted for a username and a password. So in order to get that, you go to my NPC, and then to my courses, and then to other important information, which is on the right side, and the username and password will be there. I don't know how often they change this, but as of right now, the username is NPC user, and the password is library NPC. So I'm guessing those are probably the username and password that are going to be on there, but you never know. But I will put these up here. I'll put how to get there and where to find these, but also I'll put up these actual username and password on our class site, so you can access them if that is the username and password. I think it probably will be, but just in case, there's also the information on how to get those as well. Okay, so that's how to get into the databases, the kinds of things to look for in the databases. I'll put up examples of the works cited, a regular works cited of a primary source, and an annotation and an entry for a secondary source. And I think that's it for now. For both this week, for the essay number 3 and for number 4, make sure you have the word count on the last page of the text. So a works cited page should be its own page, even if it's just that one entry for your primary source on essay number 3. If you have a page and a half of text or 2 pages of text, and the works cited can fit on page 2, don't fit it on page 2. Make it its own page. It's kind of pointless when you only have one work, but the whole point of this is to kind of get used to that process. So we're getting used to how to do this. And so have the word count on the last page of the text of your paper, not after the works cited page, especially with the research paper, because that's going to be 500, 600, 700 words on your works cited page. You don't want that. I don't want that counted as part of the 2,500. Okay. If you have the Everyday Writer, this is going to really come into use. Go to the MLA section, the MLA documentation tab, and make sure you're looking on page 569 for the sample MLA research paper. And this time you can pay full attention to the works cited on the last page, on page 578. And your final works cited page should look like this. It should have a minimum of 6 entries, the 5 secondary sources and at least the 1 primary. You can have more than that. You might be working with more than 1 primary source, and you might be working with more than 5 secondary sources, but you at least want to have 6 minimum on there. Okay. I'll also point to, let's see, when you start to put together your works cited list, you're going to want to look at the how you create entries for that. So starting on page 538 and forward, it talks specifically, gives you very specific instructions on how to create an entry for a book, how to create an entry for a journal article, how to create an entry for an online journal article that you get from a database. And remember, you have to have 3 of those for your research paper, 3 from the database. So the number, so very specifically, I thought I had this marked. Okay, so very specifically on page 547, number 37, work from an online database. That's the format you would copy and transfer in your works, your information into this format. Page 547, number 37. Okay, and I also will point you out to page 177, which has another sample of an annotated bibliography entry, an annotated works cited entry. Both the entry, that is the item that is on the works cited list, and an annotation for it. So that's another pattern. But I will put up a model example as well that shows the entry and also the annotation, which is a paragraph of 4 to 6 sentences that summarizes it and tells how you're going to use it in the work. Now, if you don't have this book, that's fine. You can go on to Online Writing Lab. It's Purdue. Just put in Purdue OWL, OWL, on Online Writing Lab, and it'll come up, and then you can search throughout that. So I've got links. I've got a link on the assignment sheet for you, and I think I put that there before. I'll put it up again. Or you would just put in Purdue OWL sample MLA research paper, and you can get the exact same thing practically that you get in the Everyday Writer. Put in Purdue OWL sample annotated works cited or annotated bibliography, and that will come up. And if you just go through the MLA documentation site there, you can find everything you need that would be in this Everyday Writer. Okay. All right. So that's in a nutshell. I hope that's fairly cogent, clear. Please definitely get in touch with me if you have questions or concerns. Come see me, call me during my office hours, Monday and Thursday, 4 to 6. Or I'm actually in the Writing Center at LLC 12 to 3, and we can actually go over things, in depth. Whatever depth you want to go into, we can do that. Or if you just have a quick question, email me, or better yet, put it on one of the forums that'll have up there just for Q&A. Not required at all, but just if you have questions and answers, you can put them up there, and everyone can see what. Everyone will benefit that way, I think. I think that's all I wanted to say about that, and that's of course a half hour. So not that was a small thing. As far as Shakespeare goes, I think the first week. Sorry I haven't been more involved in that. I think the discussion has been really good. I love the sort of ideas about how Prospero is now kind of taking the role that the gods have been taking, and I don't think anyone's talked about this specifically, but this idea that the artist as a god, right? I mean, he is an artist, and he is very, very self-consciously taking on that role of creator of. He is Shakespeare as the artist is creating this play, right? And Prospero is standing in for him. And keep in mind, this is his last play, the last play he really wrote as a part of his career proper. He did a few plays afterwards in collaboration, but this was really his grand finale. And that at the end there, when is very telling. The Prospero, the actor, steps out of the play and addresses the audience as an actor who has performed this play, and you'll see throughout is very, very self-conscious of the idea that he is creating something and in control of this, and that is happening through art. So more than any other play that he did, I think that it's important to keep in mind that he's very self-consciously aware, and that it's almost like the characters in the play are aware that they're in a work of art, that they're performing within a play, which makes for, I think, some very, very interesting kind of realizations. And the play itself is exactly 3 hours, right? I mean, the time within the play is 3 hours. That is the time that the play would have taken to be seen, acted and seen, is 3 hours, and the actual time within the play is 3 hours. So it starts in the afternoon and ends at dinner time, and then the people in the audience would have left and gone to dinner because that's exactly the real time. It takes place in real time, this idea that, like, say at the end when everyone is forgiven and people